In 2000, I published Icons of Evolution, in which I pointed out that many textbook images about Darwinian evolution used to convince students of Darwinian evolution misrepresent the evidence. And I concluded that much of what we teach about evolution is wrong. Well, the book attracted rave reviews. I should have known. I thought, my goodness, what have I done? But those reviews were not filled with lavish praise, but with furious denunciations. Some critics accused me of stupidly trying to discredit evolution simply by listing a few textbook mistakes. Here's one example. Because there are omissions, simplifications, and inaccuracies in some general biology textbooks, obviously the modern theory of evolution must be wrong. This is the astounding line of reasoning that is the backbone of Jonathan Wells's Icons of Evolution. This is even better. These two guys worked for the National Center for Science Education, which is a militantly pro-Darwin lobby organization. They called me the wine expert. Wells reminds us of those kids who used to write letters to the Superman comics many years ago. Dear editor, they would write, you made a boo-boo, et cetera, et cetera. Well, did it really affect the story? Wells cannot hurt the story of evolution. Like a petulant child, he can only throw tantrums. This is a characteristic, actually, of many of the criticisms I got in those days. So, were the Icons of Evolution just textbook boo-boos? Here's a real one, a real textbook boo-boo. This was in a physics textbook in 1997. That's a picture of the singer Linda Ronstadt with a caption underneath identifying her as an atom of arsenic, or sorry, a silicon crystal to which an atom of arsenic has been added. On the very next page, there's a picture of a silicon crystal with arsenic added, and the caption says, triodes are used in microphones to amplify sound. Obviously, the captions had been mistakenly switched, and the publisher corrected the mistake in the next edition. But what if the identification of Linda Ronstadt as a silicon crystal were reproduced essentially unchanged year after year, and in many different books, not just this one? What if the identification of Linda Ronstadt as a silicon crystal was consistent with other material in the books promoting the theory that life is based on silicon rather than carbon? And finally, what if the pictures are defended as correct even after the evidence has shown that life is not silicon-based? Well, that's what happened with the Icons of Evolution. Year after year, they're reproduced in textbooks, many textbooks, not just biology textbooks. They're part of a systematic pattern explicitly aimed at promoting Darwinian evolution. And they are defended vigorously, nastily even, by the scientific establishment even after the evidence has shown that Darwinian evolution and the icons are false. Now, a big ambiguity here is what we mean by evolution. It has several meanings. One is simply change over time, which nobody disagrees with, at least nobody that I've ever met. Another meaning for evolution is minor changes within existing species. Again, I've never met anyone who disagrees with this. We can see right here in this room that it happens. Farmers have been observing it for centuries. It's not controversial at all. But what about the origin of new species, organs, and body plans? Well, this is called macroevolution to distinguish it from the microevolution I just described. By the way, that distinction was made by a Darwinian evolutionary biologist years ago. Well, certainly new species, organs, and body plans have originated in the history of life. I don't know anyone who denies that. But the problem comes when we use Charles Darwin's theory to explain macroevolution as due solely to unguided natural processes. Now, he wrote in The Origin of Species that his book was one long argument, basically against creation by design. For Darwin, without the S, all living things were produced by unguided natural forces. He wrote in a letter later I would give absolutely nothing for my theory of natural selection if it required miraculous additions at any one stage of descent. So Darwin's theory is materialistic. What is science? Well, there are different meanings for science. One, the one that I prize most, is empirical science. That is seeking truth by formulating hypotheses and then comparing them with evidence. We have an idea, we check it against the evidence in the real world and decide whether the idea is correct or we have to change it. In a sense, we're all scientists in this regard. But another meaning of science that's become especially popular since Darwin is materialistic science. That is seeking natural explanations for everything. Explanations in terms just of material objects and the physical forces among them. Well, okay, that's not a dishonest enterprise, but the problem comes when someone engaging in that thinks that everything actually has a natural or a materialistic explanation. Logically speaking, if I want to seek material explanations, at some point I might say, if I were honest, well, you know what, I don't have an explanation for that. Maybe it's just beyond my method. But in practice, unfortunately today, many scientists believe that there are material explanations for everything, and if they just persist in trying to find them, they will. Well, that led me to define another kind of science, zombie science. By that I mean assuming that everything can be explained materialistically, and then persisting in telling materialistic stories even after the evidence has shown that they are false. And this, unfortunately, happens quite a lot. In Icons of Evolution, in 2000, I wrote about 10 images common in biology textbooks that were used to tell the materialistic story, even though by 2000 they had been shown to be misrepresentations of the evidence. The Miller-Urey experiment, Darwin's Tree of Life, homology, Haeckel's embryos, Archaeopteryx, the fossil bird with claws or with teeth in its beak and a long tail, peppered moths, Darwin's finches, four-winged fruit flies, fossil horses, and the ape-to-human fossils, actually drawings mostly.